Okay, good morning. So we are doing today Lamed Vav Amud Beis, but we are in the top part of Lamed Vav Amud Aleph, right before the lines get wide. So again, the Gemara had said yesterday, a machlokes as related to wheat flour, kimcha dechiti, wheat flour. Just to run through it quickly, the Gemara says kimcha dechiti at the two dots in the middle of the narrow part of the page. Kimcha dechiti, Rabbi Yehuda, Aimer Bar Pirat, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Shakon Nebedvari. When it comes to wheat flour, the machlokes either say Adam or Shahakal. Amar Rav Nachman. The Rav said to Rav Nachman, Tifla Galel, the Rav Yehuda. Rav said to Rav Nachman, don't argue on Rav Yehuda saying that you should make a hadama. Why? Do Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel Kamakava say? Because Rabbi Yochanan and Shmuel both hold like the way Rabbi Yehuda is saying, which is that you should make a hadama on wheat flour. Because they hold that on oil, on the olive oil, you make a bar prio eitz. Even though it is changing, you've changed something from a zayis, now it's become oil. Nevertheless, it still stays the same in terms of the bracha. You still make ha'etz. So then, so too, as it would relate to the wheat. Now you've changed it to flour. You still make the same bracha. If you would eat the kernels, you make ha'adama. So if you eat the flour, you should make a ha'adama. So the Gemara says, so too over here by the flour, even though you've changed it from the wheat, it's still going to get a hadama. How are you comparing the flour to the case of the oil? Over there with regards to the oil, it doesn't change anymore. Once the olive became the oil, it's kind of done. And in terms of its life, it's gone to the maximum it could get to. However, with regards to the flour, it still has another iteration, right? It can go into bread. So maybe the reason that you say ha'etz by the olive and then again by the oil because it's kind of limited. That's it. That's where it's going to. It's not going to go anymore. But maybe if it has still something much better to go to, maybe in fact, since this is not in its iteration now, it's not sort of getting to the maximalist place where it could go. So maybe therefore now you would still you maybe would give it a shahako. So that's the Gemara. This is what we got to yesterday. It says the Gemara, do you think that just because it has an additional uptick, an additional way of milas that it could get now to become bread, so that you shouldn't make a hadam on it now? Is that your thinking? That just because it has additional aspects to its life, therefore it should be able to get a only a shahakal now? Says the Gemara. 1 second. Amar Rav Zera Rav Masna Amar Shmuel. So Rav Zera is quoting Rav Masna quotes Shmuel. What is this halacha? It's about akara chaya v'kimcha desairi. So akara chaya is kara like we have in Rosh Hashanah, right? Like a gourd, like a pumpkin, a squash, these kind of melon type of things. Kimcha desire is our key one that we need for this Gemara, and that is barley flour. So with regards to these items, mavarchina alay shak only b'dvarei. We make a bracha on kimcha desire on barley flour. We make a bracha of shahak only b'dvarei. Remember, who's the man the Amar of this? Right? We're saying Rav Zera said in the name of Rav Masna, said in the name of Shmuel. So Shmuel is the one who said, Rav Yehuda quoted him as saying that what's the halacha for Kimcha Dechiti, right? The halacha was that according to according to what the Gemara thought, is that Shmuel would say that on Kimcha Dechiti you make a hadama. So now the Gemara is saying that on Kimcha Desire we have a straight out quote from Shmuel who's saying Kimcha Desire you make a shahako. So says the Gemara, my love, says the Gemara must be the chiti bar pradama. It must be that if on kimcha desire you're making a shahako, then of course, if I had to tell you that, that's la afuke from what kimcha dechiti, which is much more fancy, right? Barley is for the horses. So from kimcha desire you're making a shahako, then clearly, if I pointed that out to you, there must be a kimcha dechiti I'm making a hadama. The Gemara says, no, there's no raya here. The Nami shahakol niyabedvari. On chiti also you make a shahakol. So the Gemara says, really? You want to say like of Nachman that on kimcha dechita you make a shahakol, and this lesson, this halacha from Shmuel that says that on kimcha desairi you make a shahakol. It's not going to teach you anything about kimcha dechita. Is that true? Says the Gemara. If that's really the case, then why not just teach you about kimcha dechiti? Why are you teaching about kimcha desairi? Says the Gemara. Kimcha desairi mevachin ala shakol nebedvar. My love dechiti bar peratam says my no lie. Dechiti nam shakol nebedvar. Peratam v'shamin and dechiti v'kol shkein desairi. So tell me that law about kimcha dechiti. I for sure know what kimcha desairi is. So it says no, I couldn't do that. Why? Because he asked me in the chiti, I mean, honey, the chiti, I was sorry, Lord, live cloud. But I might have thought you wouldn't make a bracha on it at all. What do you mean you wouldn't make a bracha on it at all? How could you not make a bracha on it at all? The Gemara is going to come to that in a second. But the Gemara is saying that I had to tell you the kimcha desari, you make a shahak, because if not, I would not have known that you made a bracha at all. Kamash malon, that's why I told you kimcha desari, make a shahak. But you can't learn anything from kimcha to kimcha dechiti, because kimcha dechiti is also a shahak. So the Gemara says, 1 second. I don't understand. How in the world could you suggest that on Kimcha, the Sairi, there was a Havamina that you wouldn't make a bracha at all? How could it be possible to say such a thing? Umigar melech v'zamis, says the Gemara. Is it any worse than salt? And zamis is not 100% clear. If you look on the side, it says maybe it's salt water, maybe it's a soup. I'm not 100% clear what it is. But whatever it is, on an item like salt or salt water, you make a bracha. The Tanan, ala melach ala zam shakol nebedvari. If someone wanted to eat, take a piece of salt, they would make a shahakol. And on zamas, which maybe it's salt water or whatever, you make a shahakol. So how could you say that on kimcha the sairi you had a havamina not to make a bracha if on these items which are gross you make a shahakol? Then of course on kimcha desire, which okay, maybe it's not a great flour, it's barley flour, but of course you would make a shahakol, at least that. Forget the amount, forget amounts here. Just the notion of do you have to make a bracha on something that's disgusting? So we're saying kimcha desire is obviously not such a great flour compared to kimcha dechiti for sure, but it's not as bad as melach, it's not as bad as zamis, so there shouldn't have been a havamina that you don't make a bracha at all. So the Gemara says, no, it's different. Israf, why? I needed to explain this to you. I had to tell you that kimcha desire was a shahako, or I wouldn't have known that you make a bracha. Why? Because sometimes people put it in their mouth, whatever. I don't know if you grew up with it as a kid. I grew up as a kid. You use salt water, not just on Pesach, of course, but you use salt water to gargle if you had like a canker sore, right? You would basically gargle salt water. Sometimes you swallowed it, but you had salt water. That was considered very helpful. I'm not sure about the plain salt though. That I never heard of. But okay, so people sometimes put it in their mouth. So that's why you have a shahakal. Aval kimcha desairi, hoil v'kosher l'kikuni. I don't exactly know what this means in the sense of why it's bad for digestion, but something about barley flour is not good for digestion. So you might have thought, lo liv bracha l'klal, since it's harming you, maybe you shouldn't make any bracha at all. Since you are getting hana from it, even if it's harming you, you still have to make a bracha. So where did the Gemara come out here? The Gemara came out with a debate, right? Machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Nachman on kimcha dechiti. If you make a hadama, you make a shahakol, and the Gemara comes out lahalach paskin like Rabbi Nachman. Then you make a shahakol. The Gemara tried to bring a proof that maybe you should make a hadama because we see that there's a halach that says kimcha desari make a shahakol, and the Gemara says if on kimcha desari you make a shahakol, then obviously on kimcha dechiti you should make a hadama. The Gemara says not obvious at all. Actually, they both have a shahakol. So then, what was the reason you need to teach me kimcha desari makes a shahakol? The Gemara says there's a specific reason because of the fact that you would have thought you didn't have to make a bracha at all, even though on melech and zamas you have to make a bracha. On this, we thought maybe because it's so gross. It can, for your digestion, it could hurt you that you would not have to make a bracha at all. So therefore, Kamashwan, I taught you it gets a bracha. Okay, two dots in the wide lines, four lines down from the beginning of the wide lines. Kaira. So what is a kaira? Kaira is a piece of a palm tree. I don't know exactly how it works, but Rashi says is that every year when the palm tree gets bigger, so the branch of the palm tree is soft. Okay, and then a year later, when it gets to more mature, it becomes hard. Becomes another branch of the tree. So, but in its earliest stages, it's soft and it's edible. So the Gemara says, Kaira, what is the halacha of the date palm and very early branch when the branches are very nascent, when the branches are very new and they're edible? What's the halacha? What bracha do you make? Rabbi Yehuda Amar, Bari Pri Adam, Shmuel Amar Shakal Nibdvari. A machlekes if you make a hadam or shahakal. What's the logic? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Bari Pri Adam Peruhu. Rabbi Yehuda says it's a peri. It's a peri, so it gets a hadama. Shmuel Amar Shahakal Nibdvari. Shmuel says it gets a shahakal. Why? Hoil v'sefer lahaksher. Since it's not going to always be a peri, since it's going to one day be a branch, so therefore, even now I don't consider it a fruit, and therefore I make a shahakal. So, good question. Good question. So obviously that's a very fair question. Um, it's not discussed there. I thought of this question also. I don't know that anyone says this, but in my mind, the way I thought about it was because of the fact that it's not a part of the fruit at all, and it is really it's not considered a fruit. It's not a fruit. It's not any part of the fruit. So it's more closer to hadama than considered to be a fruit. Maybe I'm not 100% sure. It's more like a vegetable. Like you're eating. We say that the peris hadama, right? You make a hadama. You make yirakas to make a hadama. This is more like a yerek than anything. It's a tree. It's like a yerek. That's how I thought about it, but I didn't see anybody who said it. I didn't have a chance to look. So says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, so again, so we had a machlekes if you say a hadama or a shahako, and we explained the logic of each one. So says the Gemara, Amar Leishmul Rav Yehuda. It's a very fascinating Gemara because, of course, Rav Yehuda is the Talmud of Shmuel. We brought his opinion first before Shmuel's. You have sometimes the same thing. Rabbi Yochanan ben Lezer ben Pedas, Talmud Rabbi Yochanan. Many times in Shas, you find that the Rabbi Yochanan ben Lezer Dami Tavayu. Sometimes maybe we find the opposite of Rabbi Yochanan Dami Tavayu. Sometimes we see that Rabbi Lezer is arguing with the Rabbi. Sometimes we're passing him. Sometimes meaning him first. How is it possible? Same thing over here. I don't exactly know, but it's something to nevertheless note. So Amar Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda Shinana. Right, it's a classic line from Shmuel calling your Yehuda a sharp one, a sharpie, right? Kavasech Mustafa says, I agree with you. You're right. I said it's a shahako, but I agree with you. I think it's really a hadama. Why is that? What was the reason that Shmuel changed his mind? You have by a radish. I don't know this to be within my own observable record. I don't know. I've never had a situation like this. But radishes, if you leave them around for a long time in the ground, they get super hard and they're not edible. Right? The only time the radish is edible, I thought was always very hard. But no, that's considered edible. But there is the fact is that if you leave a radish in the ground for a long period of time, it could become super hard and it will not be edible. So what did Shmuel say? Look at the radish. The radish becomes very super hard, and you still make a hadama on it when you're eating it now. So you see that I was wrong. I wanted to say on the kaira that you should make a shahako because it's going to get very hard. No, just because it's going to get very hard in a while, so you still make a hadama. Says the more. Now here's the Stama the Talmuda speaking. This is not right. This is not Shmuel speaking. Velohi says the Gemara. Shmuel is not correct. Why is Shmuel not correct? Because when a person is planting the radish, they're planting it al das to have it when it's a soft, when it's edible. No one's having in mind, however, by the dikla, no one's thinking about eating the palm when it has this growth the new branch before it gets hard. That's not a part of the thinking. And so therefore, since no one, it's a very interesting idea, since no one thought about it when they planted it, that this was edible, so therefore on that you make a shahako. But on the tznain, just because it's going to get very hard if you left it in the ground too long, so what? People have a das to eat it at the pugla stage, which is the stage when it's a soft, and that's why he gets a hadama. So it says the Gemara, 1 second. Are you telling me that it in brachas it depends on the kind of intention that existed when it was put into the ground? Is that what you're saying? But where a person didn't have something in mind, then you wouldn't make a brach on it. The haritzlaf, the nite inshe adaita the pircham by tzlaf. Now we're going to have a sugya today about the tzlaf. Tzlaf is the caper bush, and the caper bush has all different aspects of it are edible. It has in this case the parcha. If you look at Rashi, Rashi tells us that the parcha is the shem pri. That's the actual fruit of the caper bush. So the actual fruit when you planting a caper bush is for the actual fruit. Buried slaf, the nit the inshan to the pircha. People planted slaf in order to be able to eat that fruit. It's not only the nitzpa. Again, nitzpa is another name for the slaf, another name for the caper bush. And we learn out that what is the halachas about eating different parts of the caper bush is al ha'alin val ha'tamarais. On the alin is the leaves of the caper bush. The tamarais is the sort of the types of berries that are in the leaves. They're not the fruits, but they're growths that exist in the leaves that are not part of the leaf per se, and those are also edible. So on those two, on the leaves and on the growths in the leaves, you make and on the avyanis, which is the actual fruit, and the kafris, is the shell around the fruit. Over there, you make ha'etz. And over here, what did the person have in mind when they planted it? They certainly didn't have in mind to eat all of the different aspects, because again, what the Gemara says, "Varitzlaft," and not the insha died to the pircha. People plant the caper bush, and they have in mind, what do they want? They want to get the actual fruit. They want to get the pircha, or the evyanis, as it's called. No one's planting the caper bush in order to eat the alin, to eat the leaves of the caper bush. Are they edible? Yes. You make a brach on them? Okay. But that's not the intention. No one intended to do so. So the Gemara is asking, you're telling me that it's dependent on intention? So therefore, the tznain, you make a hadam on it because people have intending to eat it when it's soft. And the kaira from the date palm, that you're not going to make a bracha on of hadam, you're going to only make a shahako because no one had the intention? So I don't understand. What about the tzlaf? No one has the intention of the alin and the tamras, and yet you still make a hadama on them. So why wouldn't the curry you also make a hadama on? Why would you say you make a shahakal on it? So Rav Nachman Yitzchak slaf nitte insha daita the shusa. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, no, you're wrong. When people plant the caper bush, everyone knows the caper bush has many different edible aspects, and so therefore when they're planting it, they are planting it at daita the shusa. They're planting it on the idea, says Rashi, lechla sa'alim as a tamres, to eat the whole thing, to eat everything, not just the actual fruit. So you're wrong. As a matter of this is like about the answer. It's not saying it's lumdis. You're wrong. They actually had das to eat everything. So that's why they're going to get adama. On the curry, since no one had das for the kaira and in the palm, so then you make a shahakal. And on the tznoin, since they had the das on the puglos, that's why you make a hadama. So the Gemara says, no one's having that in mind when they plant the palm to eat the kaira. The Afagav, the Kalsev Shmuel or Rabbi Yehuda, and even though Shmuel is praising Rabbi Yehuda, saying he's a smart guy, he's a sharp guy, Kava say the Shmuel is like Shmuel, that on the kaira, since no one had in mind when they plant a date palm in order to eat the kaira, the halacha is it is a shahako. Okay, new Gemara, but this Gemara is related more to the tzlaf. We're talking more about the tzlaf. It says Gemara Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Slav shel arla b'chutzlar. So you have to know that arla and chutzlar is midivrei sefer. It's not daraisa. So Rabbi Yehuda Marav says that what happens when you have a tzlaf of in the first 3 years, it's arla. So the Gemara says, what about that? How do you deal with this in chutzlar? So Rav said, "Salaf shel arla b'chutzlar zargas avyanis v'achlas kafrisin." You throw out the avyanis, right? That's the actual fruit. But you can eat the kafris. You can eat the shell. That's not a problem. Why? There's no arla on that. Why not? There's not a fruit. You throw the avyanis out. You throw the fruit out because that would be considered a fruit. But the kafrisin, which is the shell of the fruit, that is not considered a fruit, and therefore that is able to be what do you call? That is able to be eaten. So there's no arla on that. Says the Gemara, remember that Avyanis peri, that means to say that Avyanis is the pre, and the kafris is not the pre. Very minu, I'll ask you a stira. What's the stira? Almine nitzba, again, on the names of the caper bush, it's also called, right, a nitzba. So I'll ask you a stira then as follows. On the different parts of the nitzvah, on the different parts of the caper bush, Allah alam vala tamrois, Omer bar priadama, vala vienes vala kafris, and Omer bar priades. In Hilchas Brachos, we know that on the alan and the tamrois you make adama, and on the avienis and kafrisin you make the ha'etz. What do you mean you make ha'etz? If you're making ha'etz, then what is the kafris? The kafris is part of the fruit. No, not the ikr. The Evgenis is the ikr. The Evgenis is the fruit. The kafris is the shell. Like Rashi tells us, the kafris is who klipa gedola shesavivais hapri kein klipa higdila savav goizim dakim. It's the shell, right? The shell you have on a nut. It's important, but it is and it's edible, but it is not the main part. So the Gemara is asking, what are you telling me that Rav says that when it comes to Arla and Chutzlaretz, you don't have to deal with. You don't have to throw out the kafris, and you can eat that because there's no din of arlon because it's not a fruit. You see, you make eights on it. You see, if you're making eights on the kafris, then the kafris is what? A fruit. That's the Gemara's question. Says the Gemara, Hudamak Rabbi Akiva. What we're saying is he's going like Rabbi Akiva. Who's going like Rabbi Akiva? Rav is going like Rabbi Akiva. What do we mean like Rav is going like Rabbi Akiva? The Tanan, because we have another halacha. This halacha is by Meiser. Rabbi Lezer Omer. Rabbi Lezer says, Slaf misaser. But how do you give meiser on a tzlav? So tamris ve'avyonis ve'kafrisin. You can give meiser from any part of the caper bush, except for what? Except for the allen. The leaves you can't give as meiser, but the tamris, which are those growths in the leaves, which are edible, and the avyonis, which is obviously the fruit itself, and the kafrisin, which is the klipa, that all of that you can give as part of being mekayim your halachas of meiser. Rabbi Kiva disagrees. Rabbi Kiva says, no, you cannot take off meiser unless you are. I'm sorry, you cannot use any part of the tzlaf to take off meiser except for the avyanis, because that's the only thing. Because that's the only pre. So therefore, what must you say is that when Rav said that when it came to the halacha of arla. In Chutz La'aretz, where he said you have to throw out the avyanis, but you can eat the kafrisin, so because only the avyanis is considered a pre, he's going like Rabbi Akiva. So for the Gemara, name Malaki Rabbi Akiva. So why didn't Rav just say that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva? So Malaki Rabbi Akiva. If he would have said that the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, have I mean I feel be'eretz, I would have thought maybe the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, even in Eretz Yisrael. Well, that would be a problem because we don't necessarily pass like Rabbi Akiva in Eretz Yisrael. Kamash Malon. Halacha is that if somebody's mekel in Hilchas Arla in the land of Israel, even if we don't pass like him in Eretz Yisrael, but we will pass like the mekel in Chutz La'aretz, where everything is medivrei sefer. But we won't pass like him in Eretz Yisrael. So what's the fear? If Rav would have said that I'm paskening like Rabbi Akiva, remember, Rabbi Akiva is talking about a situation of Meiser. Rav is talking about a situation of Arla. But if Rav would have said, I'm passing like Rabbi Akiva, then you could have gotten confused and say, oh, the halacha is like Rabbi Akiva, even in Eretz Yisrael. So for the Gemara, okay, I understand why you're so concerned. So why don't we have a very good technical solution. And what is that? So say that the halacha is like Rabbi Kiva where? In Chutz La'aretz. Boom, you're done. Right? If you say that halacha is like Rabbi Kiva Chutz, then no one's going to come to fear, oh, maybe the halacha is like Rabbi Kiva in Eretz Yisrael. Because you said Chutz La'aretz. So then you solved all the problems. Says the Gemara, because we know that anybody who's makel when it comes to Eretz Yisrael, halacha is like him in Chutz La'aretz. So make it clear. And if you make it super clear, then you won't have any problems. Says the Gemara, I'm sorry. If I would have said like this, I would have thought that Hani Miligabi Meister Elon the Be'eretz Gufa Midrabanan. I would have thought, you know why the halacha is like Rabbi Kiva? If Rav would have said, I hold like Rabbi Kiva Chutz La'aretz, then I would have thought that, you know why he's thoughts like that? Because where did Rabbi Kiva say his halacha? Where's Rabbi Kiva showing us that he holds that the caper bush that only has one part of it that's a fruit? Right? Only the Evyanis, not the Kafris, not anything else. Where is that? By Hilchas Meiser. And what's Meiser on the Elonis in Eretz Yisrael? That itself is only the Rabbanon. Meiser Elon, Bisman Hazeh, Meiser Elon is only going to be a Rabbanon. So if that's the case, then if in Eretz Yisrael it's only a Rabbanon, then how could you make the argument that that's going to teach you about Arla, which is a Daraisa? It can make you even more confused. So says the Gemara, the name Halacha Rabbi Kiva v'chutz la'aretz. I'll make a bar Halacha Moshe v'chutz la'aretz. The Gemara says no. Yamar Hachi Havimina Hani Miligav Meiser Elon. The Be'eretz Gufa Midrabanan. I would have thought that Halacha is like Rabbi Kiva, where by Meiser Elon, which in the land of Israel is itself Drabanan. Aval Gabe Arla the Be'eretz Midaraisa. But when it comes to Arla, which in the land of Israel is a daraisa, so Amud Yomi it's nami nexar. So maybe you would say, but the halacha should be that we should be machmer in Chutz La'aretz because of the fact that the halacha in Eretz Yisrael is that it's a daraisa and I won't be mekel. So maybe they made a gezer that would be mimicking what they did in Eretz Yisrael. Kamash Malon, Rav had to say what he said, which is the tzlaf of Arla and Chutz La'aretz. You throw out the Evyanis and you can eat the kafrisin. Why did he say it this way? Because if he said anything about bringing in Rabbi Kiva, even if that's where he got the idea from, it would have been confusing to everybody. And therefore, the shortest way was to avoid all these potential issues and just simply to make it clear, throw out the Evyanis because that's the peri, and eat the kafrisin because that's not a peri. And yes, he does fundamentally hold like Rabbi Kiva, but he didn't have a clear way to say that without getting people confused. That's what we are on the Gemara until now. Now the Gemara has an interesting little story here. Ravina Ashkel Ma'bar because Zarek Evyanis Kafrisin. Ravina found Ma'bar Ravashi that he was throwing out the Evyanis and he was eating the Kafrisin. What do you mean? Because it was the time of Arla and he was going like Rav. So Amalei might die with Rabbi Kiva. You're going with Rabbi Kiva Shita that Evyanis is not considered a fruit, right? You're going with Rabbi Kiva the Mekel. Beloved Markebe Shama the Meklitzvei. So he says to him, Ravina says to Ravashi, why don't you go with Beishama? He's even more Mekel. What does it mean? So now we have to get the backstory on how Beishama was more Mekel. The Tanan Slav, when it comes to the caper bush, Beishama Kalayim Bekarim. Beishama says that we hold that there's Kalayim and a karim with it, right? Because we consider this a vegetable. Well, Beisolam ain't Kalayim Bekarim. Beisol says no, we don't consider it a vegetable. There's no Kalayim. But they both agree that the tzlaf is chayiv in arla. So the Gemara says, "Hagupakash." I don't understand. How could Beishama say both of these things? Amris tzlaf Beishama am kalayim mekarim alma min yeraku. Beishama says it's a part of kalayim, so therefore we know that it has to be a vegetable. V'adatani elu ve'elu meidim shechayiv ba'arla. Then he said, "Oh, but he agrees that it's chayiv in arla alma min ila." Who that means to say that you're telling me that it's a tree. So which one is it? You can't have it both ways. If Beis Shammai holds that it's going to be Chayiv in a karam, that means that he holds the vegetable. If he holds that it's Chayiv in arla, it means he holds the tree. But which one is it? So the Gemara says, Havai kasha. It's not a problem. Don't worry about it. Beis Shammai suki misafkalu va'avdi hachal l'chomer v'hachal l'chomer. Beis Shammai had no idea if a tzlaf is a tree or a vegetable. He wasn't sure. So therefore he was machmer like each. On the one hand, he was machmer that when it comes to arla, it should be considered like a tree and have arla. On the other hand, it was machmer that it should be like a vegetable that it could have kalayim. Even though it itself is the stira, he was machmer for both. So says the Gemara, if that's true, Mikol Mokin Lebeis Shammai Havli Suffolk Arla. So then it's going to come out according to Beis Shammai. It's going to be a situation of a Suffolk Arla. Utanan, and we learned Suffolk Arla be'eretz Yisrael Asur ubesurya mutter ubechutz la'aretz. As we turn the page, Yored v'loikeach ubevad shelo yirenu loiket. And the halach is that in chutz la'aretz you'll be able to go buy the the avyanis from a meicher, and you wouldn't have, as long as you didn't see what he was doing. A meicher was a guy. They point out the meicher was a guy. If you look here in my Gemara, it's the Moshe Rashi on Lamavav. So if he buys it from an akum, and you don't see what he was taking from, which tree he was taking it from, then you could eat it without asking any questions. So the Gemara is saying that Mar Baravashi is being challenged by Ravina. He's saying to him, "Why are you throwing out the Evyainais? This is a Suffolk Arla, and a Suffolk Arla in according to Beis Shammai, he doesn't know if this is even a tree, and the halacha is b'chutz la'aretz by a Suffolk like this, be able to buy it and eat it, and you don't have to throw anything out. You don't have to worry about if it's coming from Arla, even the Evyainais. So why don't you eat it? Why are you throwing out the Evyanis? Be more maker like Beis Shammai. That's the question he's asking him. So the Gemara says, no, that doesn't work. Rabbi Kiva ben Makim Rabbi Lezer didn't have a say. Rabbi Kiva, where he argues with Rabbi Lezer ben Horkin is right, one of his rabbain. So we can still do like Rabbi Kiva. But Beis Shammai ben Makim is still in a Mishnah. But Beis Shammai, where it's arguing on Beis Hill, it's not even a Mishnah. It doesn't exist. So since it doesn't exist, you can't do like him, right? That reminds us of the Gemara back on Testament Bays, where Taifa wants to bend down to say the Shema at the night, and he was in grave danger. He says the rabbis told him, because you put yourself in like you're doing like Beis Shammai, after the Mishnah was already paskin, you deserve all the danger that you put yourself into. It's a huge topic. Unfortunately, can't get into more now. So today the Gemara now another question. And the Gemara wants to know a different way to get at this point about these slaf. But typically, let's say that the kafrisin, right? This it's like a shemer lepri. Rachmana amar varatam alose period. And the Torah says that you should keep the arla on the paris. What does it say varatam alose es period? We want to dash in the s had tuffle period, not just the peri, but also what's tuffle to the peri. Mind you, shemer leperi. The thing that watches over the fruit. What watches over the fruit? The kafrisen. So in the same way that the avyana should be aser, so the kafrisen should also be aser. We're trying now a different tactic. It's a drasha from Barata Malases period that's sufficient to teach you that the same way that you have a din of arla on the avyanas, you should have a din of arla on the shemer lepri, which would be the kafrisen. This is the Gemara's kasha now. So Amarava no. Hey, I mean, then ask Hashem the pri. Hey, the asi beim tosh beim mechober. When do I say that a Shem is like a pre? That's only if it's going to be around when it's attached and when it's detached. But if it's going to not be there when it detaches, in other words, if it's not going to come along with the pre, then that's not really considered a real Shem with a pre. And so therefore, since in the case of the tzlaf, the avyonis, when they detach, are not any longer connected to the kafrisin is not considered real Shem with a pre, and therefore it is not going to get the din of arla. It's not going to get the din of being the fruit. Brad the Gemara. Abai asked the question. When you look at the pitam of a rimain, right? Look at the way a rimain grows on a picture, and you'll see the rimain grows like an esher, like upside down, right? And you'll see that the crown, the pitam of the rimain, we consider that to be mitzdaref as it relates to Tumas Oichlin. But the other side of it, right, the flower of it, that is not mitzdaref. Why is not mitzdaref? In the Gemara, nates ain't mitzdaref. When we said the fact that the nates, the flower part of it, is not mitzdaref, amud lav oichlu. That teaches me that what? That it's not considered oichlin. What's not considered oichlin? What's not considered oichlin? The nates is not considered oichlin. That's why it's not going to get Tumas oichlin. It's not an oichel. It's not something that's food. Continues the Gemara. Pitim Hashem Mistavus Vanich Shalei and Mistav. Vindik Amar Nich Shalei and Mistav. Amud Lav Oichelu Utanya. Nevertheless, we learn Gabe Arla. We will have a different Allah that seems by Arla because the Brachot teaches us that Klipe remind Vanich Shalei Klipe guys and Vagarin and Chayav Arla. What do we learn about the nates of remind? It's Chayav and Arla. What does that tell me if it's Chayav and Arla? That it is part of the fruit. So how could you tell me that the pit mashurim is mistarev when it comes to tuma, but the nates is not mistarev because it's not part of the eichel, it's not part of the food, and we know that when it comes to the riman, when the riman ripens and it detaches, the nates doesn't come along with it. The nates stays by the tree; it doesn't come with it. Right? The flower part stays separate. So if that's the case, that it's staying separate, though it's not included, so then how could it be that when it comes to Arla, it is considered part of Arla, and therefore it is a fruit? That's the Gemara's question at this stage. Answers the Gemara. When do I say that it becomes a Shemer Leperi? When do I say this? Only when the Shemer Leperi is there, at least even if it doesn't detach with it, but at least it's there when the fruit is ripe. But high kafras lays b'shas gemar peri. But the kafras is already not there by the time that the avyanis are ripe, and therefore it's not considered a real shemer peri, and therefore it's not going to be included in arla. It's not part of the fruit. Says Amy, is that true? Right, the beginning parts of a date also have this kind of Rashi says it's the same like a kafras is the avyonis, is this matachli is to the dates. So Asiri, the halacha is that it's aser. Ha'il v'naser shem leperi, because it's considered to be shem leperi. Shem leperi emes have b'kufra, right? And it's not there the whole time, right? It's only there at the beginning stages. Kishat tamarim katanim, Rashi says, kainim b'shulam, before they got ripe. And nevertheless, a karle shemer leperi, it's still considered shemer leperi, and it's there, and it's going to be aser. So how could you say that it's only shemer leperi is considered a peri only when it's there at the very ripened stage? It's not true. You see, it's by the matachli of the arla of the matachli of a date is considered arla, and it's considered a shemer leperi. It's part of the fruit, even though it's only there at the beginning stages of the date. So on that, the Gemara answers no. Says the Gemara, Rav Nachman, Savalak Rabbi Yosi. This Rav Nachman holds like Rabbi Yosi. You can't compare Rav Nachman to a normative shita. It's not a normative shita. Rav Nachman holds like Rabbi Yosi. What did Rabbi Yosi say? That Rabbi Yosi, I'm a smadar asum neshu peri. Rabbi Yosi said that a smadar, which is the very beginning, the buds of a grape, is considered a peri. So that is to say, according to Rabbi Yosi, even the very, very earliest stage is already considered a peri. And so therefore, the shemer peri could be a shemer peri, could be considered part of the peri at the very, very early stages. So if Rav Nachman ends up holding like Rabbi Yosi, so that's a shita yichida. That's like one random shita. That's not going to have impact on what Rav is trying to tell you, which is the shita of the Rabbanan. And the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says, a pligi Rabbanan, and the rabbis disagree. The rabbi said, that's way too early stage to be considered anything. We don't consider it a fruit, it won't be considered a shemer peri, and therefore the whole thing is irrelevant. Says the Gemara quickly. Rav Sim from Nerda asked the question: Do you really think that the rabbis argue on this sheet of Rabbi Yosi, that you're making it out that Rabbi Yosi is a sheet of Yachid and it's such an odd sheet and the rabbis totally disagree? That's not really true. Let's look carefully at this. Says the Gemara about Tanam, when are you not allowed to be cutting trees anymore? And trees, Beisham says all trees, once they start sprouting fruit. But still, it depends on the kind of tree. Misha Yisharsharu, Avagafanim, Misha Yigru, Vazesim, Misha Yenotsu, Vishar Koli Lonis, Misha Yitsu. So again, the specific things with regards to a carob, a geffen, and a zayas, but all other trees, Misha Yitsu. In other words, at the very, very earliest stages, when it just begins to have the buds, it's already considered, when the beginning of the fruit comes, it's already considered a fruit. So you see that the rabbis don't disagree with Rabbi Yosi. Oh, they disagree on a few of them, but not fundamentally. So if that's the case, then you see very early on it can already be considered fruit, then it already be considered a shemer peri. So Ravi, you're not correct. Again, the Rav Asi holds that this smadar is like boister, it's like a ruach, it's like pul 11 is a white bean, which doesn't make any sense. But he's basically trying to say that at the very early stage, it's already considered a fruit. The Gemara says, "Pull love and talk to that. What does that have to do with white beans? I don't understand." The Gemara says, "Ella ema shiura kipul love." We don't mean it to mean. We don't mean to say a grape is a white bean. We mean to say that it's already considered a grape, even when the size is only like the size of these tiny white beans. Already at that very early stage, it's already considered a fruit. So the Gemara says, "Man shamas edama boiser and smader loy." Right? Who is the man the Amar that says? And we really have to stop now. That boiser is a real fruit, but a smader is not a fruit. The Rabbanan of Tani Shar Kol Ilanos Mishayitziu, and the rabbis say that when it comes to all the other ilanos, it's already going to be considered a fruit from when it just begins to bud. So you see, it's not. You're not correct. The rabbis do agree with Rabbi in most cases. So Ravi, you have a problem. Why is the Shomer Lepri not considered a pri? Just because it didn't last till it was very ripe? Who cares? It's already considered a fruit at the very beginning. So it should already be Shomer Lepri. It should be considered like a pri. Elamrava new taretz. Hey, I'm going to have a Shomer Lepri. When do we say it's like a Shomer Lepri? Hey, chadiki lisle l'shomer mayas pera. If I took away the Shomer Lepri, would it kill the fruit or not? So if I would take it away and it wouldn't kill the fruit, that means it's not a Shomer Lepri. Hachaki shakas lei l'mayas peri. In a situation where they took away the Shomer Lepri, they took away the kafras from the evyanis of the tzlaf, the evyanis still were able to grow. So therefore, that's the reason why it's not a Shomer Lepri. So the more the Remaina, there was a story that they took away the nates of the Remain, the Yavesh Remaina, and the Remain died. The Perka the Bitusa, the Aikim Bitusa, and they took away the Shomer Lepri of the Perka of the Tzlaf, and it survived. The hills like Mabar Avashi, the Zorgas Evyanis, Ochlas like Kafrisin, Allah is like Mabar Avashi, who threw out the Evyanis and ate the Kafrisin, because of the fact that the key ultimately is, will it kill the fruit if it's gone, the Shomer Lepri, or not? Since here it didn't, it is still considered to be it's not considered Shomer Lepri, it's not a pri, and therefore it is able to be eaten even during Arla, because it is not a fruit. The Gabe Arla lav perininu, the Gabe brachas nami lav perininu. We're not going to consider it with regards to Arla or brachas that it's a fruit. That's why we only make a hadam on it. All right, shkaya.